Welcome to this week's episode of the WiSP Sports Desk with me, Chris Stafford, and my co-host in London is Nancy Gillen. And this is Season 3, Episode 40 already. We are recording on it's already November the 9th. And this will be obviously in your earbuds on November the 10th. Now, since we spoke last week, Nancy, and we talked a little bit about the modern pentathlon debacle, it has absolutely blown up all over the media. It's a real debacle, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been following, obviously, my former colleagues at Inside the Games. They've been on this topic, covering it every day, it seems like. So I've been following their coverage, and yeah, it seems to be escalating every 24 hours.
It certainly does. Well, we thought no better person to help us unpack what really is happening in the sport now than someone who's been on the show. Actually, she's been on different podcasts here in the distant past. I have to say, I did check before we started recording today, and it was January and February of 2016 that you were on the show. Samantha Murray, welcome, and it's great to have you back again. Anybody who has not noticed that you were the Olympic silver medalist, of course, in London. You've since retired, and now you're a full-time mum, so but you do other things, you were telling me just before, Sam. But anyway, great to have you back and to get your perspective on this. And how are things in your world?
Hi, well, it's great to join you again. And wow, 6 years. I can't believe that. And yeah, you've highlighted my life has changed enormously. I retired from modern pentathlon in 2018 after what had been a lifetime in the sport, and genuinely feeling like I was ready to move on and do different things with my days and time than train for such a niche but also demanding event with 5 diverse disciplines. I got married in 2019, and now I'm a mum to baby Elodie, who's 9 months old. So my personal life is totally different, very busy and full on. But I also work as well. I balance my family commitments with work, like many of us women do. It's no longer a thing, I think, just to be a full-time mum. I know when people meet me, even though they know that I'm a mum, they say, oh, so what do you do? What's your job? It's the assumption now that every woman works. And if you don't, then you must be in a place of extreme privilege, or there must be something wrong with you, which actually I found a bit upsetting, because you realise how difficult it is to be a mum, how much responsibility you have, and how much a baby needs their mother, especially in this first year. But alongside that, I work in people performance. I really enjoyed public speaking as an athlete, speaking at schools, but corporate events, in offices, speaking to people, helping them tap into their inner champion. And this is what I talk about to a range of clients all across the UK. And I cover topics such as resilience, perseverance, goal setting and sticking to your goals, seeing them through, but also inner leadership, taking control of your life and trying to pursue that next step up, or wherever it is that you want to go. So really, I try and bring the elite mindset into the corporate business, to the everyday person who just wants to improve themselves.
Well, you certainly have a background in perseverance, and just to remind everybody, you were a world champion, you were a European champion, and individual gold medalist in World Cup, and of course you started in juniors. And I remember you were at Bath University, weren't you? You spent some time in Bath, but that, you've got a tremendous track record there, Sam. And if anybody knows about perseverance, and in 5 different disciplines, it's you. It must have put you in good stead, I would imagine, for what you're doing now.
Absolutely. But in a lot of ways it was quite nice, because I found something that I genuinely had a passion for. And I think meeting people today in my day job, I just meet too many people who are in a role or in an organization that their values are not aligned to, and they don't live and breathe it every day. I was a lucky person who opened my eyes in the morning and wanted just to train in that event, in the modern pentathlon, improve myself, inspire other athletes in the sport, increase participation standards. I wanted to do everything, but for my sport. And that's exactly what I did. Now, it's not a mass participation event. You don't get huge sponsorship deals. But because I found a passion and pursued it with total commitment, I actually found a way to live and live pretty well from being a modern pentathlete. And I think that's the trick that so many of us have missed. And it's not necessarily our fault. It's just life, how it unfolds, the lack of advice we have, or perhaps that opportunity that somebody else got. But there's nothing stopping us making changes. And that's what I like to talk about when I meet people, really push people to consider what they can do to elevate their lives and enjoy it more.
Yeah, I think this is a conversation I'd like to have at another time in more depth.
Sure.
I really would. But just to come back to, the hot news, as we were saying, that's been all over the media for the past week is what's been happening in the sport of modern pentathlon. And just to remind everybody that it is, as you said, the 5 sports of fencing, swimming, horse riding, pistol shooting and running. 5 different disciplines. Now, do you no better person actually to give us the background as well? We touched on this last week, why we've got to the place that we have here, and what decisions have been made by the governing body, Sam, to remove horse riding because of the incident in Tokyo by the Germans, to remove that from and actually replace it, and they already have something in mind without consulting the athletes. But let's get a little bit deeper into this. What's your perspective and your knowledge of the background to this decision?
Okay, Tokyo was a shambles. It rightly so. There was an outrage of dismay in the equestrian event, the how, the why, the horse welfare, and that has caused global attention in the sport in a really negative way. Now, following Tokyo, the UIPM, that's the international governing body of the sport, Union International de Pentathlon Moderne, so UIPM, they announced that they were going to improve equestrian standards, they were going to communicate with the equestrian world more, seek advice from the FEI. The FEI is an international governing body that upholds horse welfare in equestrian competitions. So they were really going to open themselves to collaboration and improvement. Then everything went silent, and a few eyebrows were raised when that athlete in question, Annika Schloh of Germany, actually competed again just about a month after the Olympics. And the word in the community was, well, hang on a minute, I thought she was banned or something. But no, she just went out and competed, and nothing happened there. But the social media attacks kept on coming at the UIPM, demanding for news on Saint Boy the horse. How is he? What are they doing to improve, etc. It's fizzled out a bit until last week when the UIPM announced completely out of the blue. I mean, I've spoken to the Olympic champions in the sport. They knew nothing of this. Also, the national governing bodies, it came out of nowhere, announced we're removing equestrian, totally getting it out of our sport, and we're replacing it with a different discipline that we've already decided, but we can't tell you yet. Now, the outpour of just anger, frustration, disappointment across the world in this sport, they now can't ignore it. We've got a change petition going online. The athletes are going on their social media accounts and talking about it on all different outlets, and it's getting people who wouldn't necessarily listen to modern pentathlon or follow it, but they're reading about what's happened and they understand it's wrong. So it's really gaining momentum, and the great thing about social media is it really can't be ignored, and it has such influence on what people get involved with when it comes to news. So the UIPM have had to respond due to this pressure. And I'm actually part of Pentathlon United. We're a very newly formed group of hundreds and hundreds of past and present athletes who stand for the equestrian event to remain the same. Now, we're taking this into quite a strategic plan, and we're rallying the social media posts, and we're asking for that to continue, to put pressure on the UIPM. But we also have other demands which are really actually quite fair, but from this international governing body, how it has been governed for almost 3 decades, it's quite out of the norm. And this sport has come used to decisions being made just off the cuff with no consultation. We've now have a president who's been in position for 28 years.
Yeah.
He is re-elected at Congress continually, and national federations ask why. So we're trying to get momentum. We have a plan, which I'll discuss with you if you think that would be of interest.
Of course.
But now is a crucial time, because in 2.5 weeks we have Congress for the sport, for modern pentathlon. At Congress, there'll be a vote on if the president is re-elected again for another term, and there's also going to be a vote on the equestrian. So the clock is ticking, and Pentathlon United are trying everything we can to get the message out, rally support, and make the IOC listen to what the athlete community, the pentathlon community, are trying to say.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear about that plan. But just to put this into context, Sam, you and I come from an equestrian background. I was a professional in equestrian sport. You had a riding background. I seem to remember growing up on your parents' farm in Lancashire, was it?
That's right, my grandma's farm, yeah.
Yeah, and so you came from the background of knowing horses, having ridden and established, a level of riding before you got into modern pentathlon and added on the other sports. And you know that the first thing that part of the sport is about is the relationship with the horse, and in the sport you get what we call in equestrian sport, you get a catch ride, right? You get a horse that you don't know and at very short notice to jump around of show jumps, which are relatively new to relatively low, I should say, compared to equestrian sport. But nonetheless, you have to have an aptitude for riding and a basic skill. Would you like to add to that and the context of where riding is now in the sport and why it's important to keep riding as part of modern pentathlon, Sam?
Yeah, so the riding event in the pentathlon is based on Baron Pierre de Coubertin's dream, but also values. So Baron Pierre refounded the Olympic Games in 1896, and he was a military man, and he believed in creating an event where an athlete encompassed all-round abilities to showcase the ultimate athlete who had physical strength and prowess, mental ability, skill, but also the ability to work in unison with a horse. And because of his military background, he believed in the unknown horse. So riding a horse that you haven't built that relationship with, you don't have the luxury of having that relationship and day-to-day training, but a horse that immediately you have to jump on and deliver and take on your task. So in the pentathlon, the competition provides the horses, and this means that every competition an athlete will ride a new unknown horse, and therefore we have local organising committees whose task is to source these horses, test jump them to show that they are able to go around the course of jumps, and then put them into the draw for the pentathlon. Now, a pentathlon is a multi-event sport, and it's been going for a very long time. I think we just can't imagine one of the sports dropping out and being replaced with something else. And that something else is probably going to be cycling. I've heard rock climbing, and I've also heard skateboarding. So it's really quite strange. I can understand changing the rules, changing the format of how the events take place, but to deform rather than reform just doesn't make sense. And everybody in the pentathlon community chose these 5 events. They understood these are the events and this is what I want to do. And indeed the coaches, most of them have been athletes and now they coach in sport. They are skilled in these 5 events. So where does that leave us for the future? And I suppose we speak to fans all the time. We try to get a gauge on the external opinion. And I've even been speaking to people in equestrian who say, actually, the pentathlon that's the soul of the pentathlon, the horse. And the difficulty we have is that it's a bit to do with international governance, which might interest some people and might make some listeners totally switch off. But essentially, the UIPM don't uphold their standards at every international event. So as a pentathlete, you can go to World Cups, European Championships, World Championships. You'll find you'll be allocated your horse, and he or she will be lovely, but the course will be very low. It might be 90 centimetres in height or a metre, and technically it'll be quite easy, it'll be very manageable. And there you see most athletes go around without any faults. But then it gets to the Olympic Games, and because the sport is on show, because everybody's watching, and the IOC fund Pentathlon $4 million at each Olympic Games to put on an excellent event, they have to uphold their standards. So they have to make sure that the riding event is up to correct height according to the rules, with the correct technical ability, i.e. a treble and a double. And that's what athletes then see. Now, if you're from a riding background like me, you very easily just, you know how to do this. And the track is 1.20 meters. So it's quite a big track. And if you're not familiar at jumping at that height, it's very difficult. But British athletes tend to have a good childhood in horse riding. So they take this on and they enjoy it. So for me, riding at the Olympics was daunting. But essentially, I was going around a course of jumps that I had done in the past, whereas some athletes around the world are so used to jumping 90 centimetres that they get to the Olympic Games. It's huge in comparison. And they're riding horses. The calibre of horse is completely different to the calibre of horse that only need to ride a course of a metre or 90 centimetres. So it's like getting used to driving in your Mini Cooper on A roads and then jumping on a Formula One racetrack in your Ferrari. And this is what happens to pentathletes, and that's why we often see awful displays of horse riding and poor horse welfare standards at Olympic competitions, and that's hugely damaging because that's when the world is watching.
Absolutely.
And so when Annika Scheu went into that arena, and Saint Boy just didn't want to jump, he did not want to jump. The question was, well, why is she on him? Why are they letting a horse that clearly isn't happy go into the arena? And then everything that happened, the way she managed it came into question. Now, Annika is an experienced rider, but I think the emotion and that moment got to her so much. That was her chance of Olympic gold. And it was taken away from her by a horse that just didn't want to jump that day. And in her eyes, that probably did not seem fair. Did she react in a productive way? Absolutely not. Her coach also that was the nail in the coffin by stepping onto the field of play, putting her hand over the fence, thumping the horses behind. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It had no impact on the horse, but to everyone watching, it was just shocking. And I was sat in the BBC studios trying to commentate live on this, to the public, and you just think, oh my goodness. And the people in the studio at the BBC, the cameramen, the producers, they were all in total shock. They're not from the world of horse riding or equestrian, but they understood how bad that moment was. So the UIPM, if only they managed the sport better, if only every competition was the same, then perhaps that would not have happened. But the other thing is the technicality in the rules, because I was asked, well, why didn't Annika claim a reserve horse? Because every pentathlon there is a reserve horse, and they're there in case the horses in the main draw are injured or cannot go into the next round. So it does get quite complicated here, but basically, say your horse becomes lame, you can then say, well, I would like to ride the reserve horse who is healthy. But also, if your horse is eliminated in the first round, you can also then try and ride a reserve horse. And this is where the problems come in, because the UIPM have got a really bizarre rule that is that athletes share horses. So if I'm winning the competition, I will share a horse with athlete number 19, who's in 19th place. So athletes 1 to 18, after the fencing and swimming, they share horses with the athletes placed 19 to 36, if that makes sense. And the athletes 19 to 36, they ride first. So the weaker athletes after the fence and swim get on their horses and go into the show jumping arena and ride first. And then the stronger athletes pick these horses up and then ride their round. So if someone has had an awful time with their horse, pulled it in the mouth, really upset the horse, maybe even had a fall, you then, as the higher ranked athlete, have to get that horse and try and resolve the problems and give confidence to the horse and get it around that course. I mean, why? Why not provide 36 horses?
Yeah.
Why not provide that? If you have $4 million, why not provide 36 horses?
Absolutely.
It's so strange. So what happened to poor Annika was her horse was eliminated in the first round. So then she went and said, look, I'd like the reserve horse, please. But the UIPM said, oh, no, sorry, Annika, you can't have the reserve horse because Saint Boy in the first round only had 3 refusals. And the amount of refusals you need to request the reserve horse is 4. But the weird thing is, if that rider in the first round, who was from Russia, had actually fallen off, then she could have requested the reserve horse. But because it was just 3 refusals and a horse napping at the corner who didn't want to go forward, that didn't align to their rules. And so she couldn't, and there you get the picture. She had to go in on Saint Boy, who, according to people I spoke to, in the collecting ring, he wasn't moving. He just wasn't happy. Similar things happened out in Rio and out in London Olympic Games. So it's just a disaster at every Olympics. And now this governance has destroyed the sport from within. And they've let the athletes down. They've let the sport down. But it gets even worse when you look into the structure of the UIPM, our president who's been there for 28 years, how votes are allocated. And it's almost a little bit like the FIFA saga that came up with corruption. Yeah. So our president, Klaus Schulman, has set up federations all across the world in modern pentathlon. So there is a modern pentathlon federation of Congo, for example, a modern pentathlon federation of Mongolia, and they vote at Congress. And who do they vote to re-elect every time? The current president. Now, there are more inactive federations with no coaches and no athletes who vote at Congress than there are active federations who actively compete in the sport. The other thing our president has done has amended the percentage he needs to win at each Congress. He's reduced it from the average Olympic sport margin, which is 65%, to 50.1%, the lowest it can go to according to IOC commission law.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if this were football, it would be headline news, but it's modern pentathlon. So it's a small sport that is governed under a dictatorship. And this is where we're at. It's very difficult.
But the voice is getting louder, that's for sure. But before we come to your plan, which I want to hear about, Sam, I want to bring in Nancy again. Nancy, because you're obviously not from an equestrian background, but you follow this sport like every other. What's your take on this? Do you have any questions for Sam?
I think obviously from my time at Inside the Games, this is something that in not just the UIPM, but just all international federations really, kind of how poor the governance is in a lot of IFs. I think especially with modern pentathlon, you get a lot of instances where you have a president who's been in charge for a ridiculous amount of time and there's, never anyone challenging him at Congress or anything like that. So I was actually going to ask that. Is there anyone challenging the UIPM president at this Congress, or is he running unopposed? Well, we don't actually know. So the details of Congress are yet to be disclosed by the UIPM. So we don't know. I can tell you I'm not running for presidency. But as part of Pentathlon United, we are going to propose and put forward someone else to stand for presidency. The issue we have is that, and I think it comes down to money, sadly, is that he is continually re-elected, and it's how we can somehow tap into these sort of non-votes. And we need to somehow put forward someone for presidency. And we do have someone in mind. We do not want to disclose that yet, but it's someone who is very credible, hugely experienced in sports governance, and understands the sport inside out. But 2, we have to try and get the IOC to look and actually do something
and say that actually only an active federation can cast a vote, because you can be at Congress if you're inactive. Thanks for coming, but really you don't represent anyone. No one is competing in your sport. No one's paying a membership in your sport. So please come and learn, and let's help you set up and try and get coaches and athletes. But until you have someone actually doing a pentathlon in Congo, in Mongolia, well, how can they have a vote? That's the only way they can stop this situation. I don't know if either of you would have any suggestions, but the way we see it is that we have to somehow get the IOC to manage this, to help us change this system. Otherwise, it's going to stay the same. And I think what is going to happen is that I think the IOC know, and I just think it's you're right, Nancy, in that the UIPM is probably one of a number who are corrupt. But the IOC has a lot of issues right now. And so the way they've handled monopentathlon is to say, okay, guys, I want you to find a new sport in equestrian. I want you to change the sport completely. Otherwise, you'll lose your place in the Olympics. And I think that's a clever move from the IOC. I think they've done it so that the pentathlon community starts shouting, and that the UIPM then are on the spot and have to respond and answer questions. Why did they not consult anyone? Why? And answer all the questions of all the incidents that have happened in the past. And ultimately, if we go for a new sport, or if we stick with equestrian, I think the IOC will say, okay, that's fine, but the new sport you've chosen, that's great. But actually, for the committee in Los Angeles, that's not a developed sport. That isn't a sport that anyone in the world knows. So that's not going to have its place in the Olympics. And at the same time, if we stick with equestrian, we could perhaps try very hard to put on an amazing show in Paris at the 2024 Olympics, and then manage the sport really, really well in terms of equestrian standards, animal welfare standards, align ourselves to FIE standards in our horse riding, do loads of PR and positive PR with the equestrian community, and try and claw back here and show that we do care about horses. We are horse lovers in the pentathlon, and try then that LA would include us in the schedule. But even so, it's going to be quite difficult. So I think what the IOC have done is to, instead of tackle the corruption, they've made a move that will make it impossible for the sport to remain in the Olympic program.
Yeah, and we all know, and certainly from the FEI's point of view, that we are constantly adjusting the sports, not least of all in eventing, to fit with the IOC, and we have to play the game by their rules if we want to stay in the Olympic Games. And no sport is different. It's the same for modern pentathlon as it is for equestrian and every other sport. And we've been shifting the goalposts now for years. For years, I've been involved a very long time in equestrian sport, and we have to keep changing to bow to the IOC. Now, it seems to me, Sam, you've got a tremendous momentum going here. This is the opportunity, I think, for a restructure, for an internal, reconfiguration, and put your mark on the governance of the sport, which hopefully will align with the IOC, so you can stay in the Olympic Games. Do you think there's enough momentum from the athletes now to fight for their cause in a timely manner, because this is going to happen very quickly with Congress in 2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, there is momentum. We've already issued an open letter to the UIPM, which had 650 signatures of current athletes, but also past champions. So it had Olympic champions, Olympic medalists, world champions. It was a really long list, and it is ever growing every day. We're now up to something like 2,500 people who've signed this open letter. And it was demanding the immediate resignation of the president for failing the sport and a total restructure of the executive board.
Well, that's tremendous. When is the Congress taking place? Where, I should say, and when?
It's taking place in Germany, and it's on the 24th to the 28th of November. Along with the open letter, we've also written directly to Thomas Bach at the IOC asking for a meeting. Now, we've had to be careful about that because our current president has created a rule which states any athlete or coach who communicates directly with the IOC on matters of UIPM governance will be banned. So cleverly, we have, well, luckily and obviously, we have loads of ex-athletes who don't care if they're banned because they don't compete or coach in the sport. So Kate Allenby, who's now known as Kate Pocock, Kate Allenby, who won a bronze medal in Sydney 2000, she has sent a letter to Thomas Bach on behalf of Pentathlon United, but signed it herself, requesting a meeting to talk about the transparency, governance and politics within pentathlon. Along with that, we have our social media campaigns, which if anybody would retweet, reshare, post it themselves, that will help us with our momentum. And we're going to develop this further by creating really succinct messages of what Pentathlon United stand for and what we would do in the equestrian event specifically to make it good, to make it an event that people can enjoy participating in, but also enjoy watching at the same time. So we have a kind of a threefold attack in place, but we do need the IOC to help us. We need Thomas Bach, we need Kit McConnell to answer these emails and talk to us and explain what we can do together to end this corruption and create a fair sport for everybody who wishes to be in it.
Playing devil's advocate here, Sam, what if you hold their feet to the fire and the IOC say, well, you can stay in the Olympic Games as long as you ditch equestrian? What's your fallback?
Well, it would be very sad, and the pentathlon, as I know it, and the reasons why I chose to be a pentathlete will have gone. You know, I chose pentathlon because of the horses. So we don't have a fallback. We are fighting for pentathlon to maintain horse riding. We see that as everything, as fundamental to this campaign. It will not. I mean, what will it be then? It will be triathlon with fencing and another sport. Yeah. It won't be the challenge of that ultimate warrior, that ultimate soldier. It won't reflect Pierre de Coubertin's values. And, you know, he created this sport with those 5 events. So we've already changed the way that we shoot. We use laser pistols. We don't use live firearms anymore. We've reduced the day. The pentathlon now takes place on one day. So, I mean, I do question whether the IOC have actually said remove riding or lose your place in the games. I would like to ask the IOC why they haven't connected or tried to communicate with the UIPM's attitude to their equestrian standards, and how they manage that event in the past. You know, this has been going on for years, almost 2 decades, that we've seen poor horse riding levels in the sport. So why now? You know, was it that Tokyo was just the last for them, and because of social media that they have to act? Or, you know, had they tried before but the UIPM just didn't respond? We just don't know these things. And another point to raise is that it was back in 2004 when the UIPM decided to take equestrian out of the qualification process in the sport. So when you go to a major championships, you have your qualification rounds, your semi-finals, in order to reach the final. Now, they've removed equestrian from that event. So in the semi-final, athletes do not ride. They swim, they fence, and then they laser run, they run shoot. So everyone's training is focusing on the running, the swimming, the fencing, and the shooting. Because if you're great in those events, you'll gain your place in the final. And if you're in the final, that's how you get world ranking points, which will really depict on if you qualify for the Olympic Games. So you can see what happens here. These athletes, they focus on 4 events rather than 5. And it means that when they get into the equestrian event, they just have to go around the course of jumps. It's usually quite low. And so they don't develop that standard, and they don't become as competitive as they should be. Yeah. Whereas if we had to ride in the qualification rounds, then it would be completely different.
Yeah, that's obvious. Now, the shenanigans, and I'll put it in those terms, behind the scenes that have been going on with UIPM, to exclude the athletes' participation in the decision making. Are they being called to task on that? Is that changing now with the pressure that you're putting on with Pentathlon United?
Well, yeah, the UIPM. I mean, you can tell they're panicking because they've changed what they're saying. They came out saying riding's gone, we've got another sport. Then they responded and said, oh no, it's not yet decided and we don't yet have another sport. And then the president came out and said, this was in German media, no, I never said any of that. So I've been misquoted. So it's a total joke. And now we are all invited to a call this Friday on Zoom with the UIPM, which we're going to record and publish live and also save it. You have to request, and so I've been invited. And if you have a question, you have to send it in beforehand. Now, we know what's going to happen. Athletes will ask a sensitive question and they'll be shut down, and then it'll be move on to the next. So we're going to make sure that every athlete asks a very similar question to get the correct answer, so that our president can't avoid. There was a Zoom meeting last week about this, but it was invitation only to a selected number of executive board members who were all for the removal of horse riding, and they let in one athlete who's an Irish athlete who is on the UIPM athlete committee, and she asked one question, which was, why didn't you consult with us before this decision was made? And they responded by saying, thank you for your question, and then they cut her out of the chat. So they muted her so she couldn't speak. So now, we have this group call on Friday. Let's see what comes of it. But there is worry that perhaps by hosting an open call, that will help the UIPM gain validation for what they've done, that it'll somehow look politically correct, that they have had consultation and communication. So we are quite worried, but we're going to go on and really stand our ground and have a plan in place as to how we will question them. The other thing is the UIPM have got a working group on what sport to bring in or how the pentathlon should look without pentathlon. And this working group is made up of all men, and two athletes have been invited who are both male. One is Jamie Cook, and the other one is an Italian athlete who's retired and moved on. Odd, really odd. Why can't a female athlete or a female representative be there? So this kind of reflects the culture within the sport, really.
Yeah.
And Jamie Cook is a champion British athlete. He said to us, I've said, why have we not got female representation on this panel? This is basic now. And they just haven't responded. So it's difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah, and it's all about this momentum and this, and as you say, making sure every step along the way now is made public, and the cause that you have with your organisation, that's as visible as it can be. So tell everybody, Sam, how they can find you on social media and what they can do, retweet, share, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go onto Instagram, Twitter, Pentathlon United, you'll find this movement. But myself, Samantha Murray, on both of those outlets, I have posts, I reshare, and you'll soon see the wider pentathlon community. #SavePentathlon, #Pentathlon United. These are the hashtags. If you could just get involved, and also the change petition that is easily found. I'm going to reshare it after this goes live. If you could sign and share the change petition, because this is really quite important for people to take note. This will help us, and we have a timeline. It's less than 3 weeks. We have so much to do and so little time. I think what we do need is more resource. So if there's anyone who wants to get involved and help with the working group, who has possible PR contacts, strategic experience in this kind of thing, or even legal expertise, because we are looking now at the Court of Arbitration of Sport, where this could go to. So we do have some lawyers who are ex-pentathletes who are helping us, but they're all doing this alongside their full-time jobs and life commitments. So if there's anyone that wants to help the sport get involved, please just reach out to myself or anyone who's representing Pentathlon United.
Fantastic, Sam. Well, I think we're going to have you back on in a few weeks' time after Congress.
Yeah.
And see how this is unfolding. Nancy, do you have any final questions for Sam before we let her go?
I don't think I have any questions, but yeah, just good luck, because obviously it's such a hard task. I think changing, a whole federation and changing how they run it and the governance of it. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of sport needs modernising, and yeah, if you're successful in this, hopefully it can also lead the way for other athletes in other sports as well.
Yeah, to show that
Absolutely.
it can be done. Yeah, it really can. Sam, I want to wish you the best of luck, and again, thank you for taking the time to come on the show. And we will circle back after Congress and see how that unfolded. And we will put links in the show notes and on our social media to how people can participate in this, and hashtag and retweet and all the rest of it, and sign the petition. Of course, the change petition. We will put those on the website as well, Sam. So we'll stay in touch, and we'll circle back in a few weeks' time. Thanks again for your time.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
Well, Nancy, this is not going away anytime soon. Obviously, it's a big sport in a way that it has so many disciplines, right? It has 5 disciplines, and there's multi-event sports in the Olympic Games are all, fighting for their stake in the games. But this potentially could threaten the future of the sport as part of the Olympic movement.
Yeah, and I think it would be quite controversial if it did eventually go, because as Sam said, it's so kind of intrinsically linked with the Olympics, and created by de Coubertin, who is like the founder of the modern Olympic Games. So it would be very controversial if it did go. Yeah, and I feel like the IOC will, because of that. I think the IOC will be, trying to save the sport if it does get to that stage. But yeah, it's just very interesting to see. I think it's, there are instances where the IOC have stepped in. I think especially most recently with the Boxing Federation and Weightlifting Federation. Yes. And essentially, yeah, so as we had with boxing at Tokyo, the Boxing Federation didn't actually organise the Olympic competition. Because at that point, the IOC had stepped in and put a task force in place instead. So maybe it will get to that point with modern pentathlon. And I think for the athletes' sake, they'd probably hope that kind of came first before the sport was taken off the programme entirely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll, as I said, we'll stay in touch with Sam and have her come back on the show in a few weeks' time and find out, what is going to be shaken down at that Congress, because it seems like a mountain for them to climb. But as she mentioned, the momentum is there. Hopefully that they can maintain that, and change will happen for the good of the sport. Well, we're going to move on to the rest of our news this week. We have to begin with the New York Marathon, don't we? Because the Olympic champion Perez Jepchirka, she actually won a marathon in New York, came back. Of course, we missed 2020 because of COVID. What a fantastic result for her. What a year. Gosh, can't do much better than that, can you?
Yeah, she, like you said, a really, really amazing year for her. She ran it in 2 hours, 22 minutes and 39 seconds. Sounded like it was quite a exciting end as well. And she was in a freeway battle with Viola Cheptu and Ababel Yeshini. So it sounds like it was a very fiercely contested marathon. And yeah, like you said, I think to win the New York Marathon and the Olympics and an Olympic gold medal in 1 year is a pretty sure. It's definitely one to remember.
Yeah, it certainly was. Well, congratulations again to her. You know, those Ethiopians and Kenyans, the African countries, they really do produce those marathon runners. And well, also staying on the New York Marathon, there was an incredible achievement, and I know as a marathon runner yourself, you will identify with this, whether it's within the realms of possibility at all. But Shalane Flanagan was a marathoner who not only ran in the New York Marathon, she completed her quest of competing in 6 marathons in 6 weeks. That's just a tad more than you've done, Nancy, so far. But your career is very much in its infancy.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if I'll ever get to the stage of being able to do that. I mean, that is just so impressive. I think as well, because I remember she did, was it Boston and Chicago? She did it back to back on the same weekend. And I think actually ran whatever the second marathon was on that weekend, she actually ran it faster, which is just unreal. So yeah, absolutely incredible achievement. Having done a marathon myself, I know kind of the physical toll it takes, and just being able to go out and do it again and then again and then you know, like do it 6 times is incredibly impressive.
It really is extraordinary. But I know you're going to keep going. You've got the bug when it comes to marathon running now. So who knows? Hopefully we'll be able to see you one day over here running a marathon.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fun. I think, like Boston or New York would be really good fun. So fingers crossed, have to... I mean, borders are open now with the US and the UK, so logistically it's more possible. But I'd have to get entering some ballots and saving up a bit, I think.
There you go. Now, it is something that does inspire people, obviously, from all walks of life to participate in a marathon. And we saw in New York, there were, 4 former NWSL soccer players, that competed in the marathon. And they finished it in 4 minutes. And they were all around 4 minutes, about the same sort of time, weren't they?
Yeah, I think they were. So they all kind of ran around the 3 hour, 40 minute. 40-minute time, which is very impressive. So that's Abby Wambach, Lauren Holiday, Kate McGrath and Leslie Osborne ran that. And just showing, I think even though they're all retired, they've obviously still maintained a very high level of fitness, because very good time from them. Yeah,
good for them. And they obviously generated a lot of publicity with participating in the marathons the way they do, and this happens all over the world. So anybody can run a marathon. Just all you got to do is to do what Nancy did, and she has the training program now, don't you, Nancy? Already.
Yeah, I do. I can send it over to anyone that needs it.
There you go. All right, we're going to move on to rugby. And I was actually thrilled to see this result from England rugby this past weekend. They beat the Black Ferns, the New Zealand national squad. They're not just once, but twice, Nancy. That's a tremendous result for them.
Yeah, really, really good. Both matches very, very one-sided. It wasn't really closely contested. So the most recent was 56. England won 56-15. And in total, England scored 99 points against New Zealand, which is, they're the world champions. I think when you think about women's rugby across all forms, really, whether, that's 7s or 15s, New Zealand are the best, and have been for basically forever. So it's, I think it's really, I think as well, there's the point has been raised that this England team are now fully professional as well. And, they don't have to be juggling part-time jobs with playing rugby. That is now their full-time job. Yeah. So I think that has definitely come into play. I think New Zealand haven't played as much in the past few years because of COVID. So I think, it's a real confidence boost going into the World Cup next year. And it was also great to see the attendance as well. I think both matches had nearly 10,000 people turn up to watch. So really, really good attendances, and very, very positive. And I think women's rugby is definitely on the way up here.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, good for them. Well, we've got some Commonwealth Game news actually next, and talking about Commonwealth countries, and that's that they have a new chief executive, and that's going to be held in Birmingham in July, isn't it?
Yeah, so the Commonwealth Games Federation, like you said, the organisation that organises the Commonwealth Games, they have a new chief executive, and it's actually the first female chief executive of the Commonwealth Games Federation. So Katie Sadler has stepped into the role now. She had been announced as the replacement for David Gravenberg, the previous chief executive. She was announced as his replacement in August, but obviously had some loose ends to tie up before taking up the role. And she's from New Zealand. She's had quite a long history in sport. She was an artistic swimmer herself and competed for New Zealand at the Los Angeles 1984 Games. She's also competed at the Commonwealth Games in 1986. And then, kind of went into the whole sports governance, started working for Sport New Zealand, and then taught rugby as well. So she was actually the general manager for the women's game at World Rugby. And I know she was very, very highly regarded for the work she did there. So I think that's, a really positive appointment for the CGF. And as always in governance, it's always, important that women are stepping into these roles. So excited to see what she does there. Yeah,
good for her. We're moving on now to, which is getting to that season of awards, and the double Tokyo 2020 gold medalist Mu, that is Athing Mu. How could we forget that? What an athlete she is. She's among the 2021 Female Rising Star Award nominees.
Yeah, so we've had the nominees for kind of the main award, but these are the, up and coming female athletes in the world of track and field. So like you said, Athing Mu, who won 2 gold medals at the Olympics in the 800 metres and then the 4x400. She's joined by Keely Hodgkinson, who is a British athlete. So really great to see her on the list. She was quite a surprise package at the Olympics, and she finished behind Mu for silver in the 800 metres, and is also the Diamond League champion for 800 metres as well. Christine Boma, who we've spoken quite a lot about on this podcast because she was the Namibian runner who wasn't able to compete over the 400 metres because of the differences in sexual development regulations that World Athletics have. So she actually ran in the 200 metres, and despite the fact that it wasn't the distance that she normally competes across, she still earned a silver medal. And then there were 2 more. So Silja Kosonen, who is the world under-20 hammer champion, and Ethiopia's Surf Wonder Magan, who won silver in the under-20 world championships, 3,000 metres steeplechase. So quite a varied selection of athletes there. But I think, I imagine, my pick for that award is definitely Mu. I think, winning 2 Olympic gold medals.
That was extraordinary. So you've got a good cross section of athletes, from different countries: an American, British, Namibian, and Finnish. So and
Ethiopian as well. Yeah,
Ethiopian, of course. Yeah. Good for them. It's wonderful to see such rising talent. That absolutely brilliant performance. What an athlete! It just takes me back to Tokyo and watching her run. She's just extraordinary. She's a very tall girl, very slim, tall girl, isn't she?
Yeah. She really did have an amazing game. So
she did.
Just still so young. She's surely probably got quite a few gold medals left to win.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. We're going to move back to the UK now for news from your soccer club, your football team. Very, very disappointing news. We're not pointing a finger at you, but I'm really surprised at this news from Arsenal's executive board, Nancy. I think that just took everybody by surprise this week. Why don't you explain what's happening there?
Yep. So Arsenal, they have formed an advisory board which will kind of consult fans on certain issues around the club. So the advisory board is essentially made up of different representatives from all the different fan groups. So yeah, the idea is that they will discuss issues such as, I think it was diversity and inclusivity, the development of revenues to maximise investment in players, Arsenal's preservation of Arsenal's culture and traditions. And then another aspect of it is to grow the profiles of Arsenal women and women's football more generally. So the news of this formation of the advisory board was shared on Twitter a few days ago. And I mean, everyone kind of instantly noticed that there wasn't a woman included on this board. Which, I mean, first thing, how do you talk about, growing women's football and specifically the Arsenal women's team if you don't actually have, a female representative from the women's team official supporter group? And then just, it doesn't even necessarily have to matter about women's football as a whole. I think, there's so many women that support the men's club as well, or just the club as a whole.
Right.
So to have a group that is meant to represent fans, and maybe, it's probably not 50-50, but you'd say there's probably about 20 to 30% of the Arsenal fan base are women. Yeah. So how are you not having that percentage on an advisory board?
Have they responded to, obviously there's been a lot of kickback here and response on social media. Have they responded to that at all?
Not that I've seen, no. I haven't seen any response. I don't know, maybe if they're working on something or hopefully inviting a female representative onto the board or something like that. But at this current stage, I haven't seen anything.
No. All right. Well, keep us posted, won't you, if they do suddenly wake up one day and realise that there's no women on the advisory board. All right.
Yeah, I will. I definitely will.
One more football story before we go this week, and that's the declarations of interest that have been received by UEFA for Women's Euros 2025 hosting rights.
Yeah. So obviously next year we've got the Euros here in England, which I'm very excited for. But kind of the process has already started for the 2025 tournament and who is going to be the host country. So there's been 5 expressions of interest to UEFA, which they say amounts to record interest in staging the tournament, which is really positive. So there's a joint bid from, this is all potential, so it's not confirmed. So obviously you get quite a few countries dropping out of the process, but there's a joint potential bid from Denmark, Finland, Norway and Sweden, which have also been supported by the Faroe Islands and Iceland. So that's kind of a Scandinavian Nordic bid. And then we have the potential bid from France, and then Poland, Ukraine and Switzerland. So quite unique, like a varied, obviously you've got that big kind of mega bid from 4 countries who are, very renowned in European women's football and have previously hosted the Euros kind of individually. We've got France, who hosted the World Cup in 2019. And then, Poland, Ukraine and Switzerland, I think that they'd all be kind of new to hosting a women's football tournament. So it'd be interesting to see how this develops and kind of what each country, their campaign and what they include in their bid books. And just quite exciting to see increased interest in hosting the tournament as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a big year next year and the year after, isn't it, in women's football?
Yeah, and I suppose you could say 2024 as well because of the Olympics. So a lot of really big tournaments to look forward to.
Tremendous momentum. And as we record, we were talking before the show that Arsenal have travelled to Denmark to play, and we were wondering who was on that squad by the name of Tobin Heath. Absent, you think, from that squad for this midweek game?
Yeah, I've actually seen it confirmed on Twitter that she is. I think she had a really, really minor injury, which meant she didn't play against West Ham last weekend. I think that's still kept her out of the squad, but the manager, he has said that she will be back for the coming weekend. So it doesn't sound like it's too bad an injury, but yeah, she just hasn't travelled to Denmark.
Okay. All right. We'll keep an eye on that. And we'll have more soccer news and football news next week for you with our roundup from around the world of women's sports. Until then, that's our show. Thanks again to our guest, Samantha Murray from Modern Pentathlon. And I think that was a great insight from Sam, didn't you think, Nancy? I thought that was really, really helpful and hopefully helped, our listeners understand what was truly happening in the sport right now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't think I think it would have been impossible really to get the full grasp of literally everything that was going on, and she explained it very concisely. So, really, really useful to hear from her.
All right. Well, we'll be back the same time, same place as always. Nancy, just remind everybody how they can find you on social media and read what you're writing about.
Yep. So my Twitter handle is Nancy_Gillen. And my Instagram is NancyGillen_sport. And everything I write is on Give Me Sport Women, which is, if you want to find us on Twitter, it's Give Me Sport W.
And if you want to know what Nancy thinks about Arsenal Women's Football Club, just follow her on Twitter.
Yeah.
And good luck to that team tonight. And thank you for listening. Don't forget you can post your comments, questions on our social media at WiSP Sports, and also online at wisports.com, where the show notes with the links to these stories will be posted. Until next week, thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.